session. I was so excited about it. It was rescheduled from last week, but that's just given I think me like an extra week to think about it and to think about some questions. As always, we do want to make this as interactive as possible. So please give us your questions so we can weave them into the discussion. I'm absolutely thrilled today to be joined by my colleague Alessandro Masnaghetti, who's very appropriately wearing an American tie-dye t-shirt from Phil Couturi. And of course, our guest of honor is Fabio Alessandria of Burlotto. Fabio, it's great to have you with us.
It's a pleasure, Antonio.
You got to speak in English.
I see in English. We'll see.
So, well, we're thrilled to have you. And obviously, these seminars are designed to find a way to sort of keep us connected. I mean, obviously, we were talking before, Fabio, every day feels the same. There's a lot of loss of rhythm in our daily lives, even now. But the whole goal of these seminars is to help keep us together. First of all, I hope you and your family are safe and well.
Yeah, fortunately, yes. We are healthy, and also the people who work with us and also our friends. Fortunately, the situation is good for us, but also in Italy now is improving a lot. It seems that the worst period is gone, and this is important, and the life can return to be more normal, if you want. No, and so we are seeing the light.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm seeing some photos on Instagram of restaurants opening, and I know that the next time I go to Piedmont, I'm going to eat like 5 portions of agnolotti the first.
Yeah.
I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be there. I'll be in Alba tomorrow and Wednesday.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, that's terrible. Good for you. Really jealous. Have a portion for me.
Yeah, okay. That's it. I'll do that.
Okay.
So last week I had a lunch with 2 winemaker friends, and the lunch went into the dinner because we spent 12 hours sitting 12 hours because it was a long time we didn't have fun together, and it was crazy. 12 hours.
And yes, 14 hours is 12 hours,
it's a long time.
Yeah, it's alive.
Yeah.
It's like, 3 months without a friend, without good lunch, good dinner we had at home, but outside with another surrounding, no? And so we need it.
Okay.
That reminds me when I was a kid, my relatives in Sicily, you'd go for lunch and you'd stay to dinner. I used to hate that. It's very Italian, I think.
It's very Italian. It doesn't happen anymore today, because also here in Italy, time is changing also. But, we needed it. It was an amazing day, fantastic bottle.
Was that the one that you showed where you had all of these very nice wines together at Centro Storico with Vietti and...
but in the picture, there wasn't the complete lineup of the bottle.
Okay.
Some bottles were missing.
That looks pretty good. All right, so let's get serious. We have a lot to talk about, and I'm super excited about this episode. Fabio, obviously, your estate is one of the really historic estates of Piedmont, and I think, for folks who maybe are newer to your wines, I think it would be really interesting if you could give a little bit of historical background with regards to your family and Burlotto, and sort of also because in Verduno, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, obviously there's some important linkages between the families. So it would be helpful, I think, for people who may be newer to your estate to kind of understand the historical context.
See, the name of the cellar is Commendator G.B. Burlotto. That was my great-great-grandfather that he lived and worked exactly here. It was his house, and the cellar where we were today were their cellar. And he lived and worked between the middle of 1800 and the beginning of 1900. And we can say that he was a pioneer of Barolo because, the Barolo we can say that was born around the 1860, 1870, no? And before the wine made in the area was called, the wine made with Nebbiolo Clay was called just Nebbiolo. And only at that time, because of the winemaker of the area understood the potential of the wine made here, the wine made with Nebbiolo here, decided to create what today we call the appellation, we call the DOC, no? The Denominazione di Origine Controllata, and they decided to create the wine that today we call Barolo. And so he was one of the first to believe in this wine, one of the promoter of the consortium. And, you know, one of the first to believe in the quality. He was so proud about the quality that he painted all the medals and all the prizes that he won in the different exhibition, in the different tasting in the front of the house, no? Because for him it was really important, the quality. And he decided to bottle himself, because at the time it was not at all normal to bottle. It was more normal to sell the wine in demijohn or in cask to the restaurant, to the family. And he decided to bottle with this label. The label that today we use for the Barolo Monvigliero Cannubia Clivi is an original label that my family used in 1870, 1880. That one, exactly, yeah, that one. Yeah, of course, there was not road Monvigliero Cannubia or Acclivi, because at the time they produced just one Barolo, but it was that level already.
What was the first vintage that your family bottled?
Exactly, I don't know. Exactly, the first one, I don't know. But we can say my great-great-grandfather declared from the beginning 1850 as a year of producing wine. To bottling, I don't know. We know that we have a lot of documents that speak about transaction, invoice, and prices also concerning bottle between 1880 and 1890. He won, for example, he won the first medals about Barolo in 1890s, and that wine was in bottle already. But exactly to tell you, the first one we don't know.
Okay. And then what happens to the family after that period?
The company remained in our family, from father to son, from mother to son, from father to daughter, to daughter. Always in our family, and I'm the 5th generation. And you know, the company never become a big company, but the size of the company remained always this size. Today, the cellar are bigger than how they were 100 years ago, for example. So a long history, but always medium size of cellar. In the beginning, of course, my great-great-grandfather was also a negociant, because at the time it was normal for the area. Until 50 years ago, in Langhe, in Barolo area, it was normal that there were the vine grower and the cellar. But for example, he understood already a long time ago that to produce great wine, he needed the best vineyard, the best fruit. He needed high quality fruit. So he decided already at that time, in the end of 1800, beginning of 1900, to buy important vineyard like Monvigliero or like Cannubi, because he wanted to be sure to have this quality of fruit. But of course, at that time, he bought also grape, because it was normal.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all of that in a second. I think it might be interesting to understand a little bit of the relationship between your winery and Castello di Verduno, Fratelli Alessandria. What are the familiar relationships?
I'm cousin with everybody.
Just like Burgundy.
You know, my mom and my father, they are both from Verduno, so it's in Verduno live 500 people, so I have
Okay.
connection with all. Yeah.
But specifically between those two estates, the division, how are the estates related?
But the more simple to understand is with Fratelli Alessandria, because of my father and the father of Vittorio, they are brother.
Okay.
So when my father got married with my mom, he decided to leave the family business that was Fratelli Alessandria, and this happened in 71. So he decided to leave the family business and he started to work with my mom. So between me and Vittoria, we are first cousin. The relation with Castello di Verduno is also very close because of my mom and Gabriella and Lisetta. They are first cousin too, because of in the past, Castello di Verduno was in the property of Commendator G.B. Burlotto, because he bought the Castello di Verduno from the king in the beginning of 1900. And after the nephew, so my grandfather and the two other brothers decided to split the activity, the property. And at that moment, my grandfather was the man that he was more interested in wine. He was more interested in winemaking. So he inherited the cellar and the brand Commendator G.B. Burlotto. The other brother inherited the Castello di Verduno, and they opened in the beginning an hotel and a restaurant that they are still active. And just in the 70s, the daughter of the brother of my grandfather opened the cellar Castello di Verduno. And there is another third brother that the family is managing today the cellar Cascina Massara Giancarlo Burlotto. Is it clear?
No, not at all.
No, for sure.
No,
It's complicated. It's complicated. My English is bad, so riassunto. We try again.
English. It's a problem of relationship. It's so confusing.
I think we need a family tree, but this is why there's some sort of graphic. So maybe somebody who's watching this can put together a diagram, because I'm like horrible with this sort of thing. But this is why these vintages from the 60s from Castello di Verduno, they say Burlotto on them.
Yeah, because the property, the cellar, the name of the cellar, if you read the label, is Ditta Commendator G.B. Burlotto. So the cellar was always Commendator G.B. Burlotto, di Ignazio Burlotto, di Francesco Burlotto, di G.B. Burlotto. But, you know, they were proud also to have in the property the Castello di Verduno, so they added in the label Castello di Verduno, as they added in some documents proprietà in Barolo, proprietà in Cannubi, because, you know, it was you know, I think that my great-great-grandfather bought the Castello di Verduno because he was very French-oriented. And you know, the cellar in French, they were called, especially in Bordeaux, Chateau. So he wanted to have the possibility to call the cellar Chateau Castello. So the name of the company was always Commendator G.B. Burlotto. We never changed it. But he added in the label Castello di Verduno.
Okay, all right. So we're going to talk about Verduno in a second, and we've got some wonderful images from Alessandro, some maps and everything. It's going to be fantastic. But before we get to that, it would be interesting just to sort of round up the family history with your own career and how you went from university to making wine in the 90s through today.
My career is very simple. As you said, I did the technical school in Alba. I did the university, and after very few experience in France, in a few harvests, doing some winemaking in France, but very short. I never spent a year outside my cellar. But fortunately, when I started to help the family, my family were my parents. They were always very open with me. They give me a lot of free. No, they let me free to try, and for me it was very important because this is for me the best part of my work. No, to work really to have the possibility to try new things because we are classified as a traditionalist, and we are because we work in a very classic way. But it's really important for me to have the possibility to try every year new things, to do experiment because of I think it's very important, and especially in the beginning of my career, in the beginning of my work here. My parents, they never told me, oh, you cannot try this or you cannot do this. They let me free, and I think it was important to build my knowledge, to build my experience with Nebbiolo and with Barbero, with Peraverga, with our grapes.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that also as well, because Peraverga is a big part of your identity. But I'm curious to hear from Alessandro. What is it about Verduno that is so unique? Is it the geology? Is it the location? Here's this.
I believe that is both of them. So the position and the geology, but there is something mysterious about Verduno, because I don't know which is the real explanation. Because if you look at the geological map, you can see that Monvigliero, Breri, and San Lorenzo di Verduno are all these three vineyards on the same kind of geology and the same kind of soils. But we know perfectly that these three wines are completely different. And I have never found a good explanation for that, because even the elevation is not so different between Monvigliero, Breri, and San Lorenzo. Do you agree, Fabio?
See, I agree. We can say that, of course, as you said, Alessandro, the wine made in Monvigliero, they are different than the wine made in San Lorenzo in Breri, but there is a relation between these three vineyards, I think, and the wine made in that area are quite different than the wine made, for example, in the part of Verduno that is bordering La Morra. Let me say.
Oh, this is for sure, because the wines from Boscato and from Rocca dell'Olmo are completely different. But in this case, yeah, you have an explanation, because the elevation is completely different. So you have maybe 200-meter difference, maybe a little less. And the soil difference, because you have the Villa del Gesso and the La Morra conglomerate. So it's different. But inside this small area of Monvigliero, San Lorenzo, and Breri, the situation is more or less the same,
It's true, but the wine can change a lot. For example, we have vineyard in Breri, and we use for the blend of Barolo Classico because of, for example, the wine made there. For us, they have nearly the same aromatics of Monvigliero, nearly the same elegance, but they don't have the same deepness. They don't have the same character, the same force of.
Yeah, this is the point. But you cannot say why.
It's difficult to say. The reason is not clear, as you said, because of, for example, Monvigliero and Breri both are south exposed, and the soil is white soil, and blue marl Sant'Agata fossil is the origin of the formation. And everything seems the same, but the wine made in two vineyards are different.
Yeah. On the other end, you have vineyards also on the other side of Verduno, so the side that looks the Tanaro River, so Neirane, near Bricocogni. There you have a completely different situation.
Yeah,
And
the soil is different there. The soil is different. Usually in the vineyard from Verduno to La Morra, the part of clay is more important. It's a soil that retains better the water. And usually the exposition for Rocche Olmo and Boscato is east and just in some parts southeast. The elevation is higher. So, for example, the vineyard between Rocche Olmo and Boscato are vineyards that in the recent year they are giving us amazing result, no? Because of fresher microclimate, better management of water, and in the year like 09 or 15, this is very, very important.
So can I just jump in for a second for folks who are watching who might have missed it because we skipped over it pretty fast, but we're in the northern part of the appellation of Barolo, right?
yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah, and so the closest other village of the ones that people would likely recognize is La Morra, which we've referenced a couple of times.
That is south.
Yeah, so that's here. So this is
but there near on the boundary with Verduno, you have less known areas. For example, like Roere di Santa Maria. If you want to reach more famous area, you have to move 1-2 kilometers to the south. Then you have to reach Annunziata, and then you have the Arborina, Gatera, and then Rocco dell'Annunziata, Brunate, and so on.
Exactly.
But it seems that the soil that we have, for example, in Monvigliero, Breri, and San Lorenzo, is the same. It was born in the same moment of the soil that you can have in Brunate, you know, for example, until the part of Novello. It is like costone, how we can say in English, like a big mass of soil that was born in the same moment. And of course, in Brunate is slightly different, but we can say it was born in the same moment, and the constitution is not so different.
So Fabio, which vineyards in Verduno do you have parcels in, for the benefit of everybody watching?
Speaking about Barolo, we have 2 hectares in Monvigliero, point.
That's usually me.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, so
we have 2 hectares in Monvigliero, 0.8 hectares in Breri, 1.2 hectares in Boscato, 1.2 hectares in Rocche Olmo, and 1 hectare in Neirane.
Okay, and so and then you have, separate to that, in the town of Barolo, you have a parcel in Canubi, right?
In Canubi, yeah, in Canubi, 0.7 hectare in Canubi. And just recently, 2 years ago, we bought in Castelletto in Monforte. Because now it's official.
Please don't write this on your next book.
Did you make Alessandro print a book about a vineyard? He hates that.
No, so now you have to tell everybody about this vineyard.
Now I can.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about them one by one. Alessandro can correct me. My memory's not great, but I think the Canubi is in the portion called Canubi Valletta, right?
Yeah, right.
Good, great. And then tell us about Castelletto, which is in Monforte. I always love the wines from that vineyard, but why did you choose that site?
Honestly, it was a long time that we desired to complete our experience in Barolo with a kind of vineyard totally different than that what we were able to cultivate. And so Verduno, as we said before, Verduno is totally in the northern part of Barolo area. Canubi is really in the middle part of Barolare, in the Central Valley. And so we were looking for something between Monforte and Serralunga. And we have seen different vineyards, and fortunately in 2018, a man proposed us this vineyard in Castelletto, and we have thought that it was our vineyard because for different reasons. It was really in the valley where we were looking for to have a plot. It's a plot in Monforte with the soil of, we can say with the soil of Serralunga, because of, it seems that in Castelletto we have the formazione, the L'Equio formation, no? And also tasting the wine made in Castelletto, I always found, of course, we are in Monforte with the soil of Serralunga, so the wine made there are totally different than what than how the wine are in Verduno. But you know, I always find in the wine of Castelletto a touch of elegance and a lot of verticality in the wine, a lot of freshness. It was something different than what we were used to have, but we thought that it was a good vineyard to express also our ideal wine that is more in the elegance, in the finesse than just in the power, no? So the vineyard was 50 years old, was 1 hectare, so the right size for us, the really good age, good exposition. I think also Castelletto has a microclimate that can express very well quality today in this year, because it's quite fresh area there because of we call the mountain of Castelletto, because the hill can arrive until 550 meters, something like that. So the microclimate is quite fresh. Usually the grape achieved the maturity quite late. So we said, okay, it's the perfect soil, it's fresh microclimate, it produces wine more fresh, more elegant to be in that area. It can be the right vineyard for us, and we bought.
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait to taste those wines. It's going to be great. So right now, though, you have it's interesting because probably your most famous wine is Monvigliero, but the Canubi is actually more expensive, right? It's sort of a...
there is no reason in quality. Also, for us, Acclivi, Monvigliero, and Canubi, they should stay at the same level in our ideal wine. But the price is likely different because of, you know, if we speak about crew, we have also to speak about history, to speak about prestige, and I think about prestige, there is no other vineyard more prestigious than Canubi in Barolo, no? Outside the quality. I don't want to speak about quality because we can enjoy or we can prefer Canubi, or we can prefer Vigna Rionda, or we can prefer the wine made in Monvigliero or in Brunato. But you know, Canubi, I think that in Barolo area is something special for history, for the prestige, and for the consistency and quality that this vineyard can offer. Because you know, I think that the real force of Canubi is the consistency. Also, you know, we are in Canubi Valletta, and our plot is just east facing, so it's not one of the most sunny, one of the most warm place vineyard in Canubi. And so we think that we know that his work today is working well in the more humid year like 2014, because the sandy soil can you know, can help us to don't have too much water. In the warm year, the east position is protecting from the too warm and too intense light of the sun. And Canubi, we are seeing that in Canubi we have a lot of consistency.
Well, let's talk about Monvigliero, because we've got a lot of questions about Monvigliero, and I want to show this beautiful map that Alessandro did. That's super cool. Here is Alessandro's breakout of Monvigliero by owner. And I think if you can see my mouse, you have 3 parcels here, right? 1, 2, 3. Right, Alessandro? Did I miss anything?
Exactly.
Okay. It's a minor miracle for Monday morning. You'll notice I'm not drinking any wine, because if I open one of your bottles, I can't have 1 glass, and I still have a whole work day. So this is like purely.
We work for that, Antonio. Don't be afraid.
This is purely educational. The reality is, I buy your wine every year and I put it all in my off-site storage, because otherwise I have no discipline. But anyway, here's Alessandro's beautiful map. You have those 3 parcels. So are they very different, or are they, can we say that they're pretty similar? What's the
question is for me or for Alessandro?
It's for you. It's for you.
For me.
Because your previous explanation were really the best explanation I have ever heard from a wine producer in Barolo. The explanation for Castelletto was the right one, and the explanation for Canubi Valletta was perfect. So please continue.
Grazie. But the free parcel, our free parcel, they are in the central amphitheater of Monvigliero, no? And the soil in this free parcel doesn't change too much. It's very similar. What changed slightly is the exposition a little bit, because of from the left to the right part, we go from slightly southeast to southwest. So in the true parcel on the right side can be slightly warmer if you want, but there is not a lot of difference, and the quality is.
So you use the 3 different parcels together every year.
We use the grape of Monvigliero for the Barolo single vineyard Monvigliero and for the blend of Acclivi.
Okay.
The part that goes in the Barolo single vineyard Monvigliero is chosen. For Barolo Monvigliero, we work with all cluster fermentation. So the decision which grape goes in the single vineyard Monvigliero is just made considering this approach that we have in the cellar. But there is no difference in quality. Just we thinking to the vinification, we can say, okay, maybe we take the plot on the left, maybe we distant the plot on the left, or we distant the plot on the right, or the bottom of the 2 tops, or maybe the top of the 2 plot. It depends. Every year is different. There is no one plot where I can tell you every year I have more quality. No.
Okay, so the 3 parcels, hypothetically, all of it could be used for the single vineyard wine, but it just depends from year to year where you think you're going to have the best quality fruit and the best stem ripeness. And that is the fruit that you pick for the Cru Monvigliero, and the rest goes into Acclivi, right? Okay.
Right.
And so,
but this, Antonio, this doesn't mean that the quality of the grade that we use for Acclivi is lower. Just the grade that we use for Monvigliero, we think will perform well for the whole bunch fermentation.
Yeah, the stems are going to be riper. Yeah, I think people have seen, anybody who reads what I write. Hopefully, some people do. But the Acclivi wine has really come up especially in the last few years. I think there was we'll talk about wines in a second, but in my opinion anyway, there used to be more of a difference between Canubi and Monvigliero and Acclivi. And in the last couple of vintages, it really feels like Acclivi is, bumping up, which is great, obviously. So And so we talked about the exposure of those three parcels, but we have a question from Jonas. What are the soils also fairly consistent from those three parcels, or do they?
See, the soil is quite consistent in this part of Monvillero. I cannot tell you there is big variation there.
And so, Alessandro, what are the soils exactly in Monvillero for folks watching? What is the technical definition?
So these are from the Sant'Agata fossili marls and from the laminated kind of soil. So it's not particularly sandy compared to, for example, the lower part of Annunziata or some places in Castiglione Tralletto like Monprivato or Rocche. But, you know, geology is every time quite mysterious because many people say that Monvillero soils are sandy soil. For sure, they are light soils, and you have I believe that there is a big difference between the historical amphitheater where the vineyards of Fabio and many others are, and the part of Monvillero to the east, near the boundary. Yes, exactly there, on the right of the image. There, the soils are still good soils, but a little bit deeper compared to the amphitheater or the historical amphitheater of Monvillero. That's it.
Alessandro.
Yeah.
It really annoys me how much you know about Barolo. Anyway, okay. So, no, I'm kidding, of course. So
but what was in before? Because before Fabio said something about Brunate, and this is interesting as well because the upper part of Brunate, the upper part of Cerepio, is exactly the same soil and the same geology, but you know the wine are completely different. So, again, the final result is a blend of different factors. So you have the geology, you have the elevation, you have the exposure, and the perfect explanation about Castelletto from Fabio is in that case is not the formazione di Lacco that is the most important factor. It's the microclimate. It's exactly so because it's a cooler place. You have the same soil that you have in Vigna Rionda, but the result is completely different. And in this case, you have an explanation. The explanation is the microclimate. The exposure is different, and the hill is very, very high. So in the afternoon, you have the shade, big shade coming from the hill. But I don't want you to annoy about this.
No, it's good.
So you're the main actor, so.
So you're saying that the soils in Monvillero are fairly similar to the soils in Vigna Rionda?
No, it's not so. In Castelletto and Vigna Rionda, the soil more or less is the same. The big difference is the microclimate, the exposure, the shade of the hill. This is for sure.
So
Monvillero and Brunate that have the same soil.
Got it. That's fascinating. Really, really, really interesting. I think if anybody's watching, I mean, just in a half an hour, this is like the most amazing half an hour that you could have if you love these wines. Okay, so you have the Canubi and the Monvillero, which you bottle separately, and then the Acclivi is conceived as a blend of only Verduno crus, right, Fabio?
Right. He's right. He's correct. Usually we blend the grape of Monvillero, Neirane, and Roccholmo. And we do a selection of the best part of Neirane and Roccholmo, and we blend with the grape of Monvillero. The idea is to represent Verduno at its best, the total territory, not just a vineyard, and to consider Barolo with the whole philosophy of the blend, no? Because usually in Monvillero we have more perfume, more silky tanning, a lot of elegance. While, for example, in Roccholmo, we have more tension in the wine, more energy, a lot of acidity and tannin structure. While in Neirane, usually we have a lot of fruitiness. So we try to combine this 3 vineyard with different proportion every year to try to find really the best expression of Verduno for the year.
Yes, Fabio, if I remember well, in Neirane, you push the ripeness much more than in other vineyards. Is correct or not?
I push what? Sorry, Alessandro.
The ripeness, a late harvest compared to.
So Neirane, you know, our plot in Neirane is quite different than it's in the beginning of Neirane and is more close to Boscato in characteristic on the soil than what is more than what you can have usually in Neirane. Just the exposition is different because in Neirane is west exposition. We have the west exposition. In Boscato is east exposition, no? But our plot is just just leaving the village of Verduno, and it's in the top of the hill, and the position is quite windy and quite fresh too, not extremely hot, and the grape there usually achieve quite late ripening, and it's a vineyard that doesn't suffer botrytis because it's quite windy. So we really can, if you want, we can push a little bit longer the ripening, without the risk to go in over ripening, because now with the weather of this year in Piedmont, we can have also this problem. You know, in the past, it was normal to say more you wait, more you win in the harvest. Today, depending on the vineyard, we are starting to pay a lot of attention to the point of ripening, to the point of maturity, and not always wait. It means gaining quality.
Yeah,
but if we want to push a little bit, Neirane is great vintage, great place to push.
No.
Okay, and then what fruit goes into the Barolo Classico?
The base, la base, the
backbone. Yeah,
the backbone. Thank you, Alessandro. The backbone of the Barolo Classico is Breri, because it's a vineyard that really express well the character of Verduno, not this really the prettiness of Verduno, this perfume, floral nose and spiciness, and this elegance in the mouth, this velvety quality of tanning. And so for us is the perfect vineyard to start the blend of the Barolo Classico, also because it's a vineyard that it's more forward from the beginning of the life. And after we add the lower part, usually the lower part of Rocchiolmo and Neirane vineyard. And in the recent year, in the future also, Boscato we have. It's another vineyard. This is an important vineyard in Verduno that we bought 7-8 years ago. And at the moment we are producing the Langhe-Nebbiolo, but it will go in the Barolo for sure, because Boscato is an important vineyard in Verduno.
We have some really great questions from our audience. Before we get to them, I want to ask you one last question, which is looking here at the map of Monvigliero. One of the features of this vineyard has been the number of parcels that have been bought and sold just in the last few years. So, I mean, I'm sure Alessandro can add to that, but I think of Einaudi, I think of Scavino, I think of Vietti, I think of Oerzio Martini. These are all Odero here, yeah, is another new one. So is that, how do you feel as one of the families that's been there the longest? How do you feel about that? Is that a good thing, or is that not such a good thing?
It's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, especially the producer that bought in Canubi. They are all good producer, and for sure they will have the vineyard to be a as good, well represented. You know, it will help the vineyard to maintain the reputation for sure, because all these producers are good producer, and I think it's good things.
It's certainly going to be fun to taste all those wines.
Hey, I think probably today the Monvillero probably will be the vineyard with more label, with more producer that will do the single vineyard.
Great. Well, I want to ask you, we've got a few questions from our a lot of questions from our readers, but we're going to try to pick the ones that have been asked the most. But this question is from Tony Macaroni. What a great name, if that's a real name. But the question is about cold versus, and he's talking about that I seem to like your Monvillero the most in colder or more normal vintages. But can we say that there's a difference in the way Monvillero performs in hot versus cold years, or is it more, can we generalize some way, or is it more complicated than that?
Well, probably, you know, this vineyard become a little bit more popular in the Barolo lovers. In the recent year also, because I think probably Monvillero gained a little bit in the recent year from, I think that the winemaking in Monvillero, they were always I consider it for the perfume, for the finesse, for the elegance. And in the recent year, maybe with a better viticulture, and also because of now if you want, the climate is slightly warmer than how it was in the past, the wine gained a little bit also in body. You know? So I think that the wine of Monvillero, they can be more complete now. No, still very elegant, still very perfumed, but they gain it a little bit in deepness. No, as all the historical great vineyard in Langa, it's a war place, so it works well in the cold year, like for example 13, for example. But also in the warm year is working well because of this natural elegance, finesse, and the wine is difficult that become too heavy, too fat, and too concentrate. And also Monvillero is not so far from the River Tanaro. And the River Tanaro is quite important for the microclimate of the vineyard. I think it's important because it for a diurnal shift of temperature between night and day. Because of during the night, the River Tanaro is making this fresh current of air that I think it can bring down the temperature during the night.
Yeah. So for folks watching who want to know exactly what that means, the diurnal shift is the variation between the temperature during the day and the temperature at night. And the wide diurnal shift is considered an ingredient for all of the great, maybe not all, but almost all of the great vintages in Piedmont for Nebbiolo are characterized by this this diurnal shift. You know, if you read Alessandro's book, he'll often talk about this, that this is one of the ingredients that you need to have really good aromatics, full phenolic ripeness, ripe tannins, of course. You know, the color, of course, Nebbiolo is never super pigmented, but the color can be purplish, and you need in a young wine, and you get that when you have these diurnal shifts. So that's really important part of the framework of what makes a great Nebbiolo harvest, right? The variation between daytime heat, and nighttime, yeah. So, you know, when I taste wine, I mean, when you buy a wine like this, you know, it's this is the, you know, Monvillero, this is 13. These ones are supposed to be great, but you know what I'm looking for oftentimes, what I'm looking for always in an estate is the quality of the wines across the entire range. And this to me is what puts some producers at the very top, is when any wine you buy is of a certain quality. And there's a bunch in your range that stand out. The Dolcetto, which you still make that with whole clusters, if I remember correctly, right? So for people watching, the Dolcetto to me is like, you can get some of the Monvigliero experience at like 1/10 of the price because you use whole clusters. And so I'm wondering if you could talk about why you do that. I mean, obviously we understand it to be a very traditional way of making Barolo, but I've never really known of any other producer who does that with Dolcetto. And then you have to talk a little bit about Pelaverga because it's probably the most typical grape of Verduno.
See, you know, for us, we cultivate 16 hectares and we produce a bunch of bottles. So for us, it's important to maintain high quality in all the wine that we produce. And see, Dolcetto is, before when we were speaking about Monvigliero, we say that to do all cluster, it's important that the maturity of the stem, of course, and Dolcetto is really a grape that ripe very well the stem. The stem at the maturity, the stem of Dolcetto is really linified, really woody. And I think it's a technique that can work well for Dolcetto because it had a little bit of complexity, if you want, but preserving the fruitiness, enhancing the fruitiness, no? And you know, in Dolcetto, with Dolcetto you can produce wine very easy, as wine very concentrated and rich. No, my idea in Dolcetto is that I want to maintain the drinkability, the pleasure of drinking of Dolcetto, the fragrance. But I think it's a pity to produce wine just banal, just too simple, no? And all cluster for me, it's a way that permit me to have in Dolcetto something with a touch of complexity, a touch of personality, but preserving freshness, preserving fruitiness, and the wine is very engaging. So it's a wine that you drink really with pleasure. And considering Pelaverga is something special for Verduno. It was a grape. Pelaverga is a grape that historical was cultivated just in the village of Verduno, plus a few plots in Rodi and La Mora, in the part of Rodi and La Mora that were bordering Verduno. It was a grape that was disappearing. My grandfather, in middle of 1900, remained the unique producer of Pelaverga, but he made 800, 900 bottles a year. At that time, middle of 1900, it didn't exist anymore a vineyard with pure Pelaverga, but there was a row of Pelaverga in the middle of vineyard of Nebbiolo, a few plants in a mid-vineyard.
This was due, which was the reason?
We don't know. Honestly, Alessandro, I've spoken many times with my parents and with the old people in the village to understand the reason. I don't know. Nobody knows. We should say that unfortunately in the 50s, 60s, especially in the 70s, there was a trend in Barolo area in Langhe really Dolcetto oriented, no? Probably because of the people was more interested in wine, more, you know, more simple, more to drink every day, and you know, also some vineyard of Nebbiolo in great position were replaced by Dolcetto, and the most important market for all the seller in the area was Dolcetto.
Can I interrupt for a second, Fabio? Because I think this is a really important point for people who maybe are newer to these wines, to understand that even though families like yours have a very long history, that Barolo as a prized wine, its history is in that, you know, with Burgundy and Bordeaux and top wines of Spain and California, that's pretty recent because, as you said, you know, that used to be, I mean, you talk to producers a little bit older than you, but they'll say that when somebody would buy a case of Dolcetto, they would give them a bottle of Barolo as a gift.
Honestly, Barolo, was always our most important wine. It was always considered the top of the wine of the area, and maybe one of the, not maybe, and for sure one of the top wine, one of the top Italian wines, no? And honestly, the production of Barolo that my grandfather did in the 60s was not amazingly different than the production that we have today, that we produce today. He made, you know, we work with open vat tanks, no, for the fermentation of Barolo. He had 5 bigger open vat tanks. Now we have 7, and every year he filled the open, all 5. So the production was smaller, but not completely smaller. As you can see in all the bottle of 67 and 64 that the people now in New York are drinking. No, my grandfather produced Barolo. Of course, in some moment of the history, the attention was not so high as it is today. This is clear. This is true, especially in the 70s, 60 and 70.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We're almost up against our time limit. Alessandro, do you have any questions or anything you want to add?
I would like to know something more about the Pella Verga. Why is so different from the other grapes? Which kind of wine you can produce with this grape? Which kind of soil you prefer? And so on. Tell me something.
It's true. It's a totally different variety, and the wine seems to be, if you want, less Piemontese, no, than Dolcetto or than Nebbiolo, because it's very appealing, very fresh, and not too tannic. He loves good. He loves nearly the same place and the same soil of Nebbiolo. It doesn't ripe so well in north-facing plot. Concerning in the cultivation is quite vigorous, so it takes a little bit of work to clean, to do the green pruning. It's quite productive, so especially in some year the green harvest is quite important for the wine, for this variety. And as you say, the wine is something very unique with a lot of personality.
There is another Pella Verga in Piedmont. There is no connection between the two grapes, right?
Yeah, right. In the past, we believe it was the same grape. But just 30, 40 years ago, studying the DNA, we discovered that the grape were completely different.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, because also in Saluzzo, close to Saluzzo, in Pagno, they cultivate a grape that was called Pella Verga as ours. And we have a legend that say that a priest that was born in Verduno, the Beato Sebastiano Valfre, the legend say that this priest has taken some plants in Saluzzo and he planted in Verduno. And in the beginning, we believe the wine are different because of the soil is different, because the microclimate is different, but the grape is the same. But just 30 years ago, we discovered that 30, 40 years ago, we discovered that the grape are different.
Okay.
The grape are different genetically, or here the Pella Verga made a mutation, who knows, or a cross between another grape, but the DNA is different.
Great. Well, this has been just absolutely fantastic. I really have enjoyed this conversation. We could talk to you all day long. There's a last question about when to drink. When is the best time to drink your Barolos? So I'll give my opinion and then love to hear what you think. But I think that for structured wines like this, the best thing you can do is taste them immediately when they're released, like right after bottling. And then you've got to forget them till they're 8 or 10 years old. But you can get a very good glimpse of even these powerful wines and structured vintages like 16 and 13 within the first year or 18 months. And then after that, forget it. What do you think, Fabio?
You're right, Antonio. I think it depends a lot on the vintage, no? A vintage like 13 or 16, you can keep in the cellar a long time. A vintage like 11, I think they are great now. We can enjoy now. I think it's not necessary wait longer in every vintage. No, for sure. To drink an old vintage is a great bottle from an old vintage or Barolo is an emotion, is something incredible. And some of the best bottles that I ever had, some of the best wine I tasted become from this old bottle. But I think is not something that happen every year in every vintage with every vineyard. So as you said, Antonio, the good things is to follow the wine. And if we can taste in the bottle, if we can see that in some vintage, in some vineyard, we can push on, we can do. But the Barolo, I think that a good Barolo, he has to show well. It has to be in balance from the beginning of the life.
Yeah,
I think this is important for me. I don't believe a lot in the wine that in the release they are extremely tannic and not in balance. All the best examples that I had were wine that were born in balance, that in the beginning of the life maybe they were not singing, because of course in this moment the 16 needs time. You cannot be totally forward or totally open, no? But the great wine are wine that born in balance and can evolve during time, no?
Well, I think that that's a great way to end and a great lesson. So I'd like to thank you, Fabio, very much for your time on Monday. It was fantastic to talk with you, Alessandro. Thank you so much for your maps and for your incredible knowledge that you shared with us. Really appreciate it.
My t-shirt.
And your tie-dye American Sonoma Valley t-shirt. And this will be great. We'll have to do a part 2 because we've got a ton of questions and we can't get to it all. But thank you both very much. And look forward to seeing you both in person where we can have some agnolotti and some wine. All right. Cheers. Ciao.
Thank you. Thank you to you. I hope you understood something. I'm not sure.
I learned a lot. Ciao.